Hippos, cheetahs, polar bears, lions, tigers, cats, dogs, dolphins, gorillas, baboons, humans, chimpanzees, kangaroos, meerkats, various rodents, insects, amphibians and lizards, fish, birds, and rotifers. I mean, these here are just some of the creatures that have been observed killing infants of their own species. Both males and females do it, some even killing their own kids. So why do we do it? Touchy subject, bit of a disclaimer. Killing someone's kid is probably still questionable, even if you were planning on eating them after. Fruit flies are promiscuous. They will mate with multiple partners. Generally, the males compete for female attention, and the females choose the ones they like best. When the male injects his sperm into the female's oviduct, she can store the sperm in special sperm storage organs for later use. Because she's going to be so promiscuous, the males have special proteins in their seminal fluid that help them compete. Some seem to kill or deactivate the sperm of males that she had mated with before. Others act on her nervous system and seem to make her less receptive to mating. She gets less horny, so she's less likely to mate with other males, and she'll make more kids with his sperm. But unfortunately, some of these proteins are toxic to the female. This one that makes her less horny is at least one that happens to reduce her lifespan. If this is all for sexual competition, let's see what happens when we take that away. Let's do an experiment. We'll take 100 males and 100 females and pair them off randomly. We'll put them in what the scientists call interaction vials for 5 days, during which time they will interact. The male will do a little bit of a display to try to impress the female. Once the female is thoroughly impressed, they will mate. And although it was an arranged thing, they fall in love. But the hours turn to days, their excitement to indifference. Soon their interactions become routine and passionless. They still use the word love, but its meaning has completely gone. It's the time they spend apart that feels more freeing, and they long for the... Then you put them in another vial so the females can lay eggs in a fresh habitat. When that's done, you take them and throw them in the garbage. Over the course of 8 days, the larvae hatch, they eat, go pupa, and then emerge as adults. We'll knock them out with CO2, randomly pair off 100 males and 100 females again, and restart the process. Then you repeat it another 50 times. It takes about 2 years to do an experiment like this. In humans, this would take over 600 years. What we get are flies that have evolved for 50 generations under monogamous conditions. We also need something to compare them against. We'll do basically the same experiment with another group, but in this group there's going to be 3 males for each female. This will simulate their wild, promiscuous conditions, where the males compete and the females choose. So now we have 2 different groups of fruit flies that we can play with. Researchers that actually did this experiment mated monogamous and polygamous males against monogamous females to see how the males hurt the females. When with the monogamous male, the female made more eggs, the eggs developed faster, and she lived longer. So it seemed like the monogamous males weren't hurting the females as much as the promiscuous ones. But something else happened. Testing to see if there were differences in how the females were affected by the males, it seemed that the monogamous females were doing worse. They made less eggs and didn't live as long. So the monogamous males did better than the promiscuous ones, but the monogamous females did worse than the promiscuous ones. So what's going on? The proteins in the male's semen hurt the female, but help him compete. He's making more kids with her because of them, but when we take that competition away, those proteins are unhelpful because there's no one to compete with. Also, normally he can go off and mate with other females, just planting lots of seeds, and it doesn't really matter to him that he's hurting them all a bit. Here, he can't do that. Here, every little bit of damage to her, reproductively, it hurts him. In this new environment, males who produce more of the toxin will end up making less eggs or less healthy eggs compared to males who produce less of the toxin. So when we randomly select from a new batch of eggs, there are less flies with those genes. Each generation makes a little bit less toxin, and by generation 50, our monogamous males are hurting the females less. What about the females? Why did the monogamous females get hurt more? The females may have had genes for some sort of adaptation to protect themselves against the toxin. I don't know what specifically, but if the defenses took a lot of resources to produce, resources that could have gone into making more eggs, in an environment with males producing less toxin, females that produced less defenses would have produced more eggs or healthier eggs. So when researchers randomly picked the next generation of flies, more of her eggs passed on. And then by generation 50, when she mated with normal flies, the females were less equipped to deal with the toxin and they didn't do so well. But what does this have to do with killing babies? Let's look at the Gelada Baboon. They're polygamous and very competitive. A male will try to maintain sexual dominance over a group of females. If another male comes in and ousts him as the dominant, one of the first things the new male is going to try to do is kill the kids from the previous male. Because the females won't ovulate, they can't make a kid for him until they're done nursing. He doesn't really want to wait for that. Killing babies allows him to make kids faster. It's the same benefit that the male fruit flies got from having proteins that deactivate other males' sperm or cause the females to become less receptive to mating. It's so they can be the ones that are making kids with her. Unfortunately, the females are getting hurt in the process. On average, the time in between births for females with no infanticide is about 2.5 years. The time in between births for females the victim of infanticide is about 3.5 years. He might be making more kids, but she's making less. Like the fruit flies, the females have some defenses. She can, try to fight back, which will work sometimes, but the males are way larger, and best not to risk injury or death. Losing a child will suck, but she can make another and be reproductively successful. If she dies or is injured, she might not. So females with safer defenses would probably do better. With mice in the lab, if after mating, 24 hours after mating, the father is placed back in near the female, nothing happens. When another female is placed there, nothing happens. But they observed if a male who is not the father is placed in near the female, a quarter of the tested females miscarried their litter. When a male who wasn't another albino lab mouse like the female, but a wild type mouse, about 3/4 of them miscarried. I don't know why that's different, but probably has something to do with the smell. Other researchers just pumped in the pheromones of strange males and saw the same effect. Geladas have been seen to do this in the wild. Researchers looked at the number of births between troops that had a male replacement and those that didn't. 6 months before a replacement seems about the same, but within 6 months after, very few females produced a child compared to troops that kept the same male. And then 6 months after that, the troop made double. Seems like they all miscarried, got pregnant from the new male at the same time, and then made a baby at the same time. Also, by looking at the hormones in their poop, they saw that the females were miscarrying around the time of the arrival of the new male. In the end, the time in between births for females that automatically miscarried their child was about 2.5 years. Females that automatically miscarry will make more children than females that put all those resources into an infant that just ended up getting killed by a new male. But this infanticide isn't a male thing, it's a scarcity of breeding resources thing. Females can do the same thing for the same reasons. With wattled jacanas, it's the females that maintain sexual dominance over a few males. They're the ones that guard the males and eggs, and they will fight females of neighboring areas for territory and access to their males. It's the males that sit on the eggs and take care of the chicks. Takes them about 3 months to wean a clutch of chicks. One researcher tried experimentally removing the guarding female of one group the night before. Within the first hour of the next day, the females from bordering territories came in and were trying to kill the chicks or crush the eggs of the old female. If one succeeds, she will try to court him and get him to raise her eggs. This way she doesn't have to wait 3 months. It's only about 8 to 10 days before he's sitting on her eggs. But infanticide is observed even without some sort of dominance takeover like this. In meerkats, most of the infanticide is committed by females, and they become even more murderous when they're pregnant. A group of researchers watched 28 meerkat packs in South Africa. Of the subordinate females that gave birth, on average 60% of their litters emerged from the burrow 2 weeks later, if the dominant female wasn't pregnant. If she was pregnant, on average, none of their litters emerged. For dominant females, it was about 80%, and it didn't seem to change whether the subordinates were pregnant or not. Most of the infanticide happened underground. A litter was presumed dead when they no longer have guarding babysitters left for them. Meerkats share the duty of feeding and babysitting the kids. The infanticide typically happened within the first day or two of the kid's birth. And of the 6 pups that were observed to be killed, 5 were killed or eaten by pregnant females. Again, mostly within the first 24 hours. Why do it, and why so much more when they're pregnant? The idea is less of other people's kids running around means more food and resources for your own kids. But meerkats share the duty of nursing the pups. So when they're pregnant, they go around and try to kill everyone else's kids, so that when their kids are born, they get all the attention. What about parents killing their own kids? If reproduction is what it's all about, then how could this behavior ever evolve? Burying beetles are an insect that use a little dead rodent or dead bird as a house for their kids. They take them into a little den or bury them. where they will lay their eggs, and when the larvae hatch, the little guys have a place to live and eat. It is both food and shelter. Researchers decided to play with them. They gave some beetle couples a 30-gram mouse corpse and others a 15-gram one. The beetles ended up laying the same number of eggs, despite the corpse they got, but after they hatched, the parents with the 15-gram corpses ended up eating about half of their larvae within the first 24 hours of their birth. Why this? If there's not enough food, the parents could leave them alone, but then they would all end up being malnourished. Maybe so much so that they would die before leaving or be outcompeted later in life. Or they could kill some to make sure the others are as healthy as they can be. They'll have less larvae, but they'll have healthier larvae that have a better chance of making little larvas of their own. Oh, and they eat them too. They do that to, get some of those nutrients back. Anyways, what's the lesson in all this? It's not that monogamy is better than polygamy or anything like that. That's a different whatever. And there's otherwise nothing here that says how we should be acting. We're just contextualizing what we see in terms of what works reproductively. Also, we didn't get into what proportion of these behaviors might be influenced by genetics or the environment. We've just been assuming the behaviors are directly or strongly influenced by genes. No, the real lesson is, I guess if you're alive today, it's because your parents, your neighbors, your parents' new lover, didn't try to kill you or make some sort of baby tikka masala. This episode is brought to you by McKay's Crispy Baby Nuggets. Pro choices in every bite.